There we go.
You can listen to it 3 or 4 times. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I do have a pronouncer, but it,
And then what I do is I phonetically, I put it on a little card phonetically, and I pick the card.
oh,
What's this one here?
well, I give you credit, you put a lot of time into it.
Thank you.
There we go. All right.
It's your-
I wonder why they called it Syria. That must be what it is.
I was hoping to see the green suit, but then I don't know, I like the purple suit better.
I had a lot of time.
What are the chances of us doing the trunk or shirt?
Oh, not great.
That's what I thought.
I mean, last week they kind of cleared a lot of stuff. There wasn't a lot going on, so I was like, oh, maybe. But then I haven't been here since Monday, so I just was driving in, and so now they've got all the mounds of dirt, and
It'd be real confusing for the folks.
I don't
to
know.
figure out how to get-
yeah. So we might have to skip it this year, but
We don't want anybody getting hurt.
we'll see.
We don't want anybody getting hurt.
No, that's a fact.
Yeah,
We could
we'll
just
see.
rich people.
For us.
All right.
For you, Ron. Thank you.
Okay, so good evening. Hello. All right, so we're entering an interesting little section here. Well, I mean, this is the end of Acts. So basically, starting with chapter 21 till the end, this is Paul's return to Jerusalem, and then being the mobs kind of get after him. He sort of gets arrested, and then he's going to be kind of moved around until he ends up in Rome. So this is the end of Acts, and because of that, I mentioned last week trying to maybe do a couple chapters. Well, we did a couple chapters last week. Tonight we might do a couple, but that's kind of because if you look at how the chapter breaks in these last chapters, they're not great. And sometimes like the end of chapter 22 is actually really the beginning of chapter 23, and I don't really know why they broke it up like that. I have no idea. So this line is just kind of I tried to break it up so we don't have these long sections, but it is what it is. And a certain amount of this is really just kind of, I mean, it's just narrative. It's not, there's no, like tonight, I don't think there are any like deep theological teachings that we can dig into in this text. I mean, there are things we could talk about for sure. There's always things we can talk about, but for the most part, it's fairly straightforward. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So Acts 21, verses 1 through 14. When we had parted from them and set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. And having found a ship crossing to Phoenicia, we went aboard and set sail. When we had come in sight of Cyprus, leaving it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, for there the ship was to unload its cargo. And having sought out the disciples, we stayed there for 7 days. And through the Spirit they were telling Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. When our days there were ended, we departed and went on our journey, and they all, with wives and children, accompanied us until we were outside the city. And kneeling down on the beach, we prayed and said farewell to one another. Then we went on board the ship, and they returned home. When we had finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at Ptolemy, and we greeted the brothers and stayed with them for 1 day. On the next day we departed and came to Caesarea, and we entered the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the 7, and stayed with him. He had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. While we were staying for many days, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. And coming to us, he took Paul's belt and bound his own feet and hands and said, "Thus says the Holy Spirit, this is how the Jews at Jerusalem will bind the man who owns this belt and deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles." When we heard this, we and the people there urged him not to go to Jerusalem. Then Paul answered, "What are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? For I am ready not only to be imprisoned, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus." And since he would not be persuaded, we ceased and said, "Let the will of the Lord be done." All right. So, long story short, Paul's heading to Jerusalem. There's a few little details here that, are interesting. And really that's in the second paragraph here, verses 7 through 14. So Philip, Philip was the one, Philip an Ethiopian eunuch, where he was out and dealing with that, and then he kind of was whisked away. So he's out here in Caesarea doing his thing still. He's been there for a while. I think at this point it's been 20 some odd years that Philip's been out there, I think. So he's been doing his thing. It mentions that he was one of the seven. These were the seven people way back in the beginning of Acts when the disciples or the apostles were saying, we can't wait tables. We need to pick guys to help us. And they picked 7 guys. That's what they're referring to. So Philip was one of the 7 guys. So one of the 7. Now this is probably the most interesting. Of course, Mary Volkner's not here. She would be all over this. Mary. He had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. This is kind of this is a big deal, and it's something especially that, again, if Mary was here, she'd latch right onto this because this would be right up her alley. When we say they prophesied, well, they proclaimed the gospel. They pointed to Jesus. We've got the Old Testament and a New Testament, right? And here's Jesus, right? So Old Testament prophets, when they would prophesy, all they were really saying was they'd look at what's going on here, and they would take that and point ahead to Christ. So even in all the exilic kind of stuff, everything prophetic was always in some way pointing ahead to Christ. The New Testament prophets, in the same way, when they prophesy, they're, whatever's going on here, they're pointing back to Christ. So a prophet is just somebody who points to Christ in some capacity. New Testament, or in the time of the church, who are the prophets nowadays? We would look to pastors, to clergy, those who proclaim the gospel. However, we have Philip's 4 unmarried daughters who are prophesying. That's pretty significant. Which kind of illustrates that, when we start talking about why, the LCMS has, no female clergy, only male pastors, we're not saying that women aren't able to do the job. We're not saying that women can't, we're not even saying that women aren't even, they can't even proclaim the gospel. We don't say that at all. Please, absolutely. Now, it is some are given the gift of prophecy, or to prophesy, which is to proclaim rightly, to speak the gospel in all its truth, winsomely, to share it with people. Absolutely. Can women do that? Yeah, absolutely. So it's not like we're discounting that they can do it. It's just in the office of the pastor, this is where it's okay, you can do it, but in this order of things, this is just not the one office that it's well, no. So the 4 daughters couldn't fill the office of pastor, but they could certainly go on prophesying, proclaiming Christ. No issue with that whatsoever. So that's fairly significant little detail, and something that if you wanted to dig into, we certainly could.
Is there a place where where do they get it that only men can be,
Well, you go to Timothy when he's writing the pastoral epistles. Paul writes to the pastoral in the pastoral epistles, where he says the qualifications for an overseer, a pastor, are this: husband to only one wife, not a lover of money or drinker or drunkard. Or all. So he lists all the categories, and they are male clergy. You know, it is very specific that it's a male office. So that's, you know, we get it from the pastoral epistles directly. I suppose you could go back through like into the Old Testament, kind of, you know, the priestly, you know, the high priest and all the male office. But while you could point to that and say like, okay, these were all shadows pointing ahead. It's like, well, yeah, okay.
Christ said,
I know.
most of that aside.
I know. That's why I usually don't go to that. Not because it's problematic. It's just, oh, we're going to get into it. Thanks, Paul.
I guess Christ picked out 12 males.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get to all the Old Testament laws and regulations and all that, you know, it's real fun because well, of course, you know, most of those don't have any bearing on us, right? Well, okay, true. But what does have any bearing on us? It's like, well, okay, well, the Ten Commandments. We like the Ten Commandments. And usually the argument for that is we hold to the Ten Commandments because Jesus kind of re-emphasizes the Ten Commandments. He teaches the Ten Commandments. You know, you've heard it said, you shall not kill, yada, yada, yada. What does the law say? And he's referring to, you know, the 10 words. So then there starts to become we start making these distinctions between, well, there's, you know, in the Old Testament, there were different kinds of laws. There were civil laws, ceremonial laws, and, you know, and so forth. And we say, like, the civil laws, that was how they governed Israel back then. So, you know, we aren't covered by that. Those civil laws are just for Israel in that time period, and that's gone. Ceremonial laws, well, those had to do with like the sacrifices and the keeping of the tabernacle temple. So we don't follow those. But then we like to well, then there's the moral law. And the moral law is always there. But then it gets sticky because it's like, well, the moral law is woven into a lot of the ceremonial and the civil law. So it just gets really sticky when you're trying to square away all this stuff and separate out and all this stuff. Generally, just to avoid the stickiness, I just go with like, you know what? Yeah, the old covenant stuff we don't worry about. I'll just like blanket statement, we don't worry about it. Okay. So what do we have? Well, we have what Christ says. Okay. Well, Jesus still talks about like, well, what is the law? You know, how Jesus summarizes it is he'll say, you know, love God with all your heart, strength, everything, and love your neighbor as yourself. So basically what I would point to is like, okay, so the law is encapsulated in those two things, love God, love your neighbor. How do you know how it's done? Go to the Ten Commandments. That's the overview of the law. Because, I mean, even Jesus, when he's dealing with people, you know, who are asking about the law, he refers to the Ten Commandments. So the Ten Commandments, for my money, they're perfect for understanding what Jesus says about love God, love your neighbor. They inform that. I don't like to dig into trying to separate out, well, this is the civil law and this is the ceremonial. Because it's not, if you go through the Old Testament, it's not like Moses is saying like, okay, guys, here's the civil law and here's the ceremonial law. He doesn't categorize them like that. It's just the law. So it just feels real icky for me to go in there and be like, and we start like, well, that's ceremonial, that's civil, and it's like, well, people like to change things based on their own, you know, like, well, I don't like it there, and it's like, so I don't worry about it. I just like, you know what? Old covenant is old covenant stuff. We're new covenant stuff, and the law is love God, love your neighbor. The Ten Commandments fills that in, and really, you don't run into any issues there. It's pretty well covered.
That wasn't unusual, and that went into a lot of like the Native Americans. The men fought, and the women. Anybody got something in their hand to throw at me? They collected firewood and they cooked and everything. that went on until what, 1920, or when the women could vote?
Sure, but that's just the way
Yeah,
things were, and you have different societies, different cultures, whatever, structuring in different ways.
Yeah, some societies had women. as
Yeah.
their head.
yeah, but they couldn't do certain things.
No,
They
some
couldn't fight.
societies had women as their head, as
Yeah.
their leaders.
Yeah, matriarchal kind of.
Go fight.
Yes.
There's still the division of labor with hunter-gatherer society.
Oh yeah, sure.
I
Every
can't name them, but
yeah, every culture has had different ways of divvying up this, that, and the other. In bringing it back to there was something. Oh, the brain was working there for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. It's been off and on all day. It's been off and on all week, honestly. Yeah, if you follow me on Facebook, you know it's been off and on all week.
Get it?
If it comes back to me, I'll say something. But yeah. Any other thoughts about any of that?
All I was saying is.
What was I gonna say? I don't know.
The men were on one side fighting the wars, and the women were
Right.
on the other side.
I saw. Well, I think where I was even going to go with something like that was just say that the problem with going back into the old covenant and trying to pick and choose and pull out some of the laws and all that is that because you get into a lot of stuff that was very, the majority of it was like, okay, this is for the people of Israel of the, BC, however many thousands of years time period. This was for them. The problem that we have is when we pull out stuff and then try to say like, well, this is a universal law for all time. And it's like, well, no, it wasn't. Like, it was for them. And this gets into a bigger issue that I've been mulling around, so I'm not even ready to. These are half-baked thoughts at best. They still need a lot of baking to go before I get into it. So I'm just going to stop there before I say anything stupid. Because it's very likely I will say something that's like, that doesn't sound right. All right, any other questions? I'm surprised nobody pointed this out. Where was it? In verse 4. Through the Spirit, they were telling Paul not to go to Jerusalem. Where, the Spirit was telling Paul to go to Jerusalem. So now Luke is saying, through the Spirit, they were telling Paul not to go to Jerusalem. So, we have an issue here. And so this is how we sort this out. Well, you can't have the Spirit saying two different things to different people, right? If the Spirit is telling Paul, go to Jerusalem, you can't have the Spirit telling the people, prevent Paul from going to Jerusalem. It's just, if you're going to accept that, I don't know why you're here. Because the Bible is full of contradictions, it makes no sense. Let's go have dinner. So, it's got to make sense. And it's really actually not that difficult because Luke doesn't say the Spirit was telling them. Really what he's saying is through the Spirit, they were telling Paul. So basically, the Spirit was communicating to them, Paul needs to go to Jerusalem. And yet through the Spirit revealing to them, they were telling Paul, don't go. So basically the Spirit was revealing to them, Paul is going to, bad things are going to happen to Paul. Very bad things. And they heard that and said, ooh, don't go to Jerusalem. The Spirit has revealed to us what's going to happen. Don't do it. So the Spirit is not.
The Spirit wasn't telling him not to.
Right. Yeah. The Spirit. Well, as happens with a lot of people, if the Holy Spirit ever reveals something to you,
Check it against the Bible.
well, it's a 50-50 shot you're going to understand it correctly and get the right message from it. Like, like if the Spirit revealed to me, like, I really wanted to go get ice cream from Baskin Robbins tonight. Like after It's one of our things that we can sometimes, if I'm really like, let's just go get some ice cream. And the Spirit revealed to me, no, do not get ice cream tonight. I would hear that be like, so Baskin Robbins is off the table. But there are other options. Quality Dairy has some pretty good ice cream. So yeah, I would take what the Spirit says and go my own little way with it. Obeying the letter of the law, if not the actual Spirit. So anyway, anything else on that? Sorry. These conference weeks are really, they're a lot.
Ron just told me I don't have to pick up firewood tonight.
Hey, there you go. Good job. Giving her she might need to. It's going to be freezing. You'll find out because I'm sure you'll be sleeping on the couch by the end of the night.
We don't even have one.
All right. Anything else on that one? All right. Moving on, verses 15 through 26. Oh, after these days we got ready and went up to Jerusalem. And some of the disciples from Caesarea went with us, bringing us to the house of Mnason of Cyprus, an early disciple with whom we should lodge. When we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. After greeting them, he related one by one the things of God that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God. And they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed. They are all zealous for the law. And they have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. Do therefore what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take these men and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads. Thus all will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, but that you yourself also live in observance of the law. But as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality." Then Paul took the men, and the next day he purified himself along with them, and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled, and the offering presented for each one of them. Okay, so Paul comes back, gets back to Jerusalem, tells everybody like, ooh, these are the awesome things God's doing. They're like, woo, awesome. But then they're like, hey, that's great. Problem. There's all these Jews who they become believers. That's great. And they're still very zealous for the law. They're still holding to the old customs, which we all agree is fine. They can do that. But, they're very zealous about it. And the thing is, they've been told, so remember all the Jews that were against Paul and following him around and getting stoning him to death and all this stuff. So they've been spreading these rumors that Paul is going around to all the Jews saying, Moses sucks, don't believe him, you got to stop circumcising, stop being kosher, stop doing all that old stuff. Of course, Paul is not saying any of this. These are false reports, false rumors, but it's freaking out all the new converts. Because these are new converts, these are Jews who are becoming Christians. So I mean there's I think you're the only adult convert we have, right?
The what?
Adult convert. You were baptized as an adult.
Oh.
Right? Everybody else was.
I didn't know what you said.
Oh yeah, okay, so we got 2. I mean, when you're coming into this brand new, I mean, there's a lot, right? A lot you need to learn, a lot you don't know, a lot that's like, well, this is what I used to do. Can I still do this? So I mean, when you grow up with this stuff, it's just you don't have these issues. But when you're coming in brand new, questions are surely to abound, and especially in this case where you've got Jews who are very much living a life according to all these laws that, technically speaking, don't do anything for you. And this is a hard thing to get over, so they're still keeping the law. So when they hear about this awesome apostle Paul, who's doing great, honest, goodness God work, is saying all these atrocious things about the law, and what's going on? So this is the beauty about the early church. Look at how they deal with things. They see a problem on the horizon, and they do something about it. They talk to each other. They plan things out. They're like, hey, this is going to be an issue. Yes, I see this. They actually have a really good plan. So they're like, here's what we're going to do. And they say, like, look, and people know you're in town. Okay, so things are going to, if we don't handle it. So they say, here's what we're going to do. We got these 4 guys. They're going through the whole process of the making the vows, and it's a whole thing where they got to shave their heads and do the right, bring the offerings and this whole procedure, right? Says, look, they need to do their thing at the temple. Go with them. Purify yourself. Paul's not doing a vow. He's just like accompanying men. He's paying for their offerings and whatnot. He's giving the offering. So he's assisting with them in the law to show that he's still doing law stuff, purifying himself. Cool. So they'll see that you still live in observance with the law, and they're sending a letter out to all the Gentile churches just to make sure, like, hey, when news gets out that we made Paul do this, we want all the Gentiles to know, like, we're not saying you need to do this. We're not saying you need to be circumcised. Just remember the things we already told you. No food to idols, no blood, blah, 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 blah. They were on top of it. I mean, my God, a church body that like thinks ahead and is proactive and actually covers all their bases. Holy crap, this would be awesome. If only we had such a thing on earth. Yeah, I don't really know what happened that we completely like, but man, we don't do that as well anymore. It's just, it doesn't happen. But it's really, like I said, there's not a lot of deep theological stuff here, but I just love the fact that they were really careful and thoughtful and like seeing what could possibly happen. And like, this is the earliest CYA letter that they send out. I love this stuff. This is just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Any questions, thoughts about that?
How was purification done?
Oh, just special washings, and there was a whole ritual for doing that. So it was just like making sure he was going through all the right steps. But yeah, it's just great. It's like people know you're here. We're going to do this. We're going to make sure you do that. We're going to make sure that's okay. We're going to talk to these guys. They are just coordinating the heck out of this, and it's fantastic. It doesn't work like it all. Anyway, but they tried. Any other questions, comments? Can you tell I just came from a district meeting, a conference? Bureaucracy. All right. Acts 21, it actually wasn't a bad conference. I was just really bored. Verses 27 through 36. All right. When the 7 days were almost completed, so this is dealing with their vow, the 4 guys, their vow. So when the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd and laid hands on him, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man who is teaching everyone everywhere against the people and the law and this place. Moreover, he even brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place." For they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian with him in the city, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. Then all the city was stirred up, and the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. And as they were seeking to kill him, word came to the tribune of the cohort that all Jerusalem was in confusion. He at once took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them. And when they saw the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. That was nice. Then the tribune came up and arrested him and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains. He inquired who he was and what he had done. Some in the crowd were shouting one thing, some another, and as he could not learn the facts because of the uproar, he ordered him to be brought into the barracks. And when he came to the steps, he was actually carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd, for the mob of the people followed, crying out, "Away with him!" Which, away with him, just means kill him. That's just a nice way to put it.
Nice part of the time, anyway.
Yeah, the world would be awesome if not for people. Because look, they just ruin everything.
One can start the whole.
Oh yeah. Well, and you gotta love how it's so these Jews from Asia. So I mean, from Asia, they've come a long way to start some crap. They see Paul, and then they get him. And I love how it's like, this man, he's teaching everyone everywhere. He's against people, against law, against this place. And it's just, they're like, they're just manic, right? And here's the kicker. And he brought Greeks into the temple to defile it, because they saw him hanging out with a Greek dude like a couple days earlier. And then they're like, and now, okay, so we saw him with one Greek dude, and then there's 4 dudes he took into the temple. I'll bet they're Greek dudes too. Oh, he's defiling the temple. So it's just like, wow. Okay. So they're freaking out. They're completely losing it. They drag him out of the temple, and once the gates were shut. So here's the beautiful thing. So he's in the temple with these 4 Jews. Everything's fine. The people are freaking out. And of course, the people at the temple are the ones who shut the gates, right? And they want him out. So the people are freaking out because he's defiled the temple. So they drag him outside the temple and close the gates, because they didn't want to defile the temple further by spilling blood in the temple. Because they're like, all right, yeah, kill him. So here, the priests and everybody in charge of the temple, they're like, we got to keep the law about not defiling the temple, but killing, killing a guy without charging him, having a trial and all that, that's okay. If you remember the whole Jesus thing, it's kind of wrong to do a trial or kill somebody without a trial. That's why they did it all in secret. So yeah, it's just beautiful. It's like it's just like madness. And so you've got the Jews from Asia who are spewing lies about Paul and jumping to conclusions. You got the temple people who are like, don't defile it, but kill that guy. And it's just beautiful how everything is just like. The tribune and the centurion, so they are parked off like right next to the temple, because where does usually all the trouble start in Jerusalem? Right around the temple. So this is smart. So they're positioned in, I believe there's like this tower that was kind of connected by a staircase to the temple area. That's where they are, because they need to be able to access the temple real quick to quell any rebellions and riots. Well, here we go. So they come down and are like, wow, what's going on? And they're like, oh, this guy. So they're just like, okay, we're just going to like chain this guy, drag him. So they get Paul in chains, drag him in. I mean, these are soldiers. These are, Roman soldiers, centurions. And even they're like, this is too rough. And they're beating on everybody as they're trying to drag Paul into the barracks just to get him away. And they're all shouting, kill him, kill him. So, fun situation. A good time was had by all. Any comments about that one?
What is the
Tribune? That's the head guy.
Okay.
We'll get his name. He was Claudius something or other. I forget his.
Sentence where it says he acquired, that's who he is.
Yep. Yeah, the Tribune is the one who is kind of functioning sort of in the same way that Pontius Pilate was, overseer. Fun stuff. Okay, moving along then. Acts 21 verse 37 into chapter 22 verse 16, because of course. As Paul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the Tribune, "May I say something to you?" Pardon me, sir. And he said, he said, "Do you know Greek?" Basically what he said. And he said, "Oh, you know Greek?" And then he says, "Are you not the Egyptian then, who recently stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 men of the assassins out into the wilderness?" Paul replied, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no obscure city. I beg you, permit me to speak to the people." And when he had given him permission, Paul, standing on the steps, motioned with his hand to the people. When there was a great hush, he addressed them in the Hebrew language, saying, "Brothers and fathers, hear the defense that I now make before you." And when they heard that he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they became even more quiet. And he said, "I am a Jew, born in Tarsus in Cilicia, but brought up in this city, educated at the feet of Gamaliel, according to the strict manner of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God, as all of you are this day. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women, as the high priest and the whole council of elders can bear me witness. From them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed toward Damascus to take those who were also there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. As I was on my way and drew near to Damascus, about noon a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me. And I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Rise and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me, and came into Damascus. And one Ananias, a devout man according to the law, well spoken of by all the Jews who lived there, came to me. And standing by me, he said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very hour I received my sight and saw him. And he said, The God of our fathers appointed you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear a voice from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him to everyone of what you have seen and heard. And now, why do you wait? Rise and be baptized, and wash away your sins, calling on his. All right, so Paul wants to address the crowd, and he does. Basically just tells the story. He's like, look, here's who I was, here's what I did, here's what happened. So he goes through the whole conversion, Damascus Road, seeing Jesus thing. And yeah, he just lays it out for him. The one thing that I would probably point out, which is usually not brought up in these discussions, last verse, 16, Rise and be baptized and wash away your sins. That seems to indicate that baptism and the washing away of sins seems to be connected. I've rarely ever hear that one used for talking to people to defend baptismal regeneration. I don't know why, but it's a pretty good one. Rise, be baptized, and wash away your sins. I don't know. Is it just me? It looks connected to me.
Seems obvious.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
But I was thought baptism was.
Well, yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, it's. I mean, if you ever get into an argument with a Baptist, and don't recommend it, just point them to Acts 22, verse 16, and be like, "All right, explain it," and then walk away. Don't even wait; just walk. Any questions, comments about that? Pretty straightforward. Okay. We might get a little bit further. I brought my Bible just in case, and we're good. Acts 22, 17 through 29. When I had returned to Jerusalem, so he's continuing. When I had returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw him saying to me, Make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your testimony about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being shed, I myself was standing by and approving and watching over the garments of those who killed him. And he said to me, Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Up to this word they listened to him. Then they raised their voices and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth. Kill him, for he should not be allowed to live. Kill him. And as they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the tribune ordered him to be brought into the barracks, saying that he should be examined by flogging. It's a great way to be examined, to find out why they were shouting against him like this. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, Is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen and uncondemned? When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said to him, What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen. So the tribune came and said to him, Tell me, are you a Roman citizen? And he said, Yes. The tribune answered, I bought this citizenship for a large sum. Paul said, But I am a citizen by birth. So those who were about to examine him, withdrew from him immediately, and the tribune was also afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him. See, now this is
Paul was one step ahead.
right. See, this is where it's comedy. So yeah, it's really good stuff. So they're listening to him, like, okay, they're being patient, I guess. but when he gets to the end where he says, "Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles." So it's great because it's like, even if they're giving him the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, so maybe God did show up to you, and maybe he was pointing Jesus out as like, okay, all right, we're with you. But then he said, and then God sent me to the Gentiles. Like, oh, no, that's not what God would do. God would never do that. He would, blah, 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 blah. So it's at that point where that's the one step too far. So as soon as they hear, I'm sending you to the Gentiles, they're like, nope, kill him. We're done. So yeah, then he's ordered into the barracks to be examined by flogging. This is the same flogging that Jesus got. So, so in order to charge somebody, it's best to have a confession. What better way to get a confession than just whip them until, yeah.
Similar to the witch trials.
Yeah. If you don't confess that you're a witch, then we're just going to keep dunking you in water until you drown. So then you confess and we burn you.
Oh,
Makes sense.
You're safe.
Yeah.
You're not a witch, but you're not here either.
Right. Just be roundly whipped for a while, then, it'll make things a lot easier. And I love it that he waits until, I don't know if it's Paul's sense of timing or what. Or the dude is just, maybe it's just like, I guess once you're stoned to death once, maybe it just doesn't faze you as much anymore. When they're going to start whipping you to death, like, this might as well happen. But I love that he waits until he's stretched out. And he doesn't just come out and say, like, hey, by the way, but he's like, hey, is it lawful for you to flog a guy who's a Roman citizen? And uncondemned. So he doesn't just come out and say it, but he obviously very much alludes to it, which freaks the centurion out, which then goes to the tribune, because the centurion is just following orders and like, do you know what you're doing here? Like, are we supposed to be doing this? So you got to love just, thank God for the chain of command and that they were good soldiers, because they're like, okay, go up to, really? Questioning the order, because like, this isn't, we're not supposed to do this. Tribune's like, wait, what? Then goes to Paul, is like, you a Roman citizen? It's like, yes. And then the Tribune is saying, well, I bought my citizenship for a large sum. So kind of like maybe he's doubting, maybe you're just saying this to get out of it. And I'm a citizen. I paid my, and Paul's like, I'm a citizen by birth, which there was a tier where like you could buy your citizenship, but that was, it's like, yeah, you were a citizen, but if you were born as one, that means your father was one. That means your family was probably, and if your family was, they probably did something beneficial to the empire. So, especially since, he's a Jew. So it's like, this is bad.
I always wondered why he didn't say something earlier.
I don't know.
He was getting shaved and
He likes he has a flair for the dramatic.
weird.
Hey, you don't, you got to use your chips judiciously. You don't pull them all. If you go all in once, yeah, you might lose them. And what you got? You got to play it right. Got to hold some back. That was the awesome illustration they gave us at seminary, like one of our first classes, like Intro to Pastoral Ministry. Which actually, this is kind of weird. Now I think about it. Intro to Pastoral Ministry. This was a 100 level class. Every first year had to take it. So it was kind of like part of their boot camp, scare you straight kind of thing, where they're like getting you ready for the horrors of ministry and make sure you're all tough enough to deal with it. And one of the ways that they describe is like, okay, now when you go out, every time you go to a new congregation, all right, you go with a stack of poker chips, like a big old stack of poker chips, all right? You want to be very careful how you use them. So like they're doing something, they've been doing something for like, a long time, and it's like, it's not a big deal, but it kind of irks you. You know what? I wouldn't use any chips, or maybe use one, like lodge a, like, hey, what are you doing? And like, but because if you put all your poker chips in, I guarantee you newbie coming into this established congregation, and this is the way we've always done it, and the women are in charge of it too, and you put all your chips in, you're going to lose all those chips. And then you got nothing. So that way the next time you're like, well, I want to change this, they're going to be like, no. And you got nothing to bargain with. I don't know what it says that they described this as like a nice little poker game. I guess it makes sense, but in retrospect, it feels a little crass. But I suppose there's some wisdom in it. It's mainly to prevent like fresh out of seminary guys from coming in and being like, "We're changing everything." Yeah.
So, the rest of the story, where it ends,
Yes. Oh, okay.
do you think happens to this next review?
So I wasn't sure how far we get into it. So what is that? 22? Where did we end? Verse 29? Okay.
This is like reading history, but you don't know.
I know, right? And we got 15 minutes. So unless you wanted me to riff on something else, or I can wow you with some more AI photos. What's that? See what happens. Okay. All right. So he was afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and he had bound him. So the Tribune is like, oh crap. Because, it's bad enough that they were going to do it, but they bound him for one, which is like, you don't treat Roman citizens like that. So the Tribune is already, like, if Paul wanted to, like, lodge a complaint, that's his butts on, the hot seat. So, begin with verse 30 here, and this goes into chapter 23 then. But the next day, desiring to know the real reason why the Jews accused him, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet. And he brought Paul down and set him before them. So this is chapter 23. And Paul, looking intently at the council, said, Brethren, I have lived before God in all good conscience up to this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God shall strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law? And yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck? Those who stood by said, Would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I did not know that he was the high priest. For it is written, You shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. So, the Tribune brings Paul out. He's like, let's sort this out. We're going to do this the right way. And I'm not going to beat it out of him because... So he gets the high priests, the Sanhedrin. Gets the Sanhedrin and he's like, come here, explain yourselves. And Paul begins by saying, brothers. Okay, brothers, I have lived before God in all good conscience up to this day. I've been zealous for God, and I have lived according to God's law, yada, yada, yada. And the high priest, Ananias, commanded some guy to strike him in the mouth. All right? And then Paul says... God shall strike you. So to Ananias, God shall strike you, you whitewashed wall. Basically, you hypocrite. So, he's getting into him. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck? So you're a hypocrite. You're going to accuse me of breaking the law when you're breaking the law. So this is like this really great exchange. And then those who are standing by are like, this is the high priest. And Paul's like, I didn't know that. He's not acting like one. He's acting like a And he says, like, I didn't know that. Because, hey, I know what's written. You shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. So he's subtle digs. And Paul's getting kind of randy at this point. Probably because he knows he's got a layer of protection now because they know he's a Roman citizen. So they're not going to let anything happen in front of them. So he's like, so he calls him a hypocrite. He's like, well, I had no idea you were. I'm sure the way he's dressed or something would have, but it's like, I don't know. If you're going to, all I know is you're just a dumb jerk. But here's where it gets really good. But when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Brethren, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. With respect to the hope and the resurrection of the dead, I am on trial. So, he looks out, he's like, all right, Sanhedrin, you got Pharisees, you got Sadducees. So he says, look, hey, guys, I'm just like you. I'm a Pharisee, I'm a son of Pharisees, and the reason I am here on trial is because of the hope that I have in the resurrection of the dead. Which is kind of a weird thing to say, right? Do you remember what the thing is about the Sadducees? They don't believe in the resurrection. The Pharisees do. Sadducees don't. So track this. This is why I say Paul's just like, "Nyeh." So he says this. When he said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended, "We find nothing wrong with this man." What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him? So they're kind of being dicks to the other guys, be like, "Oh, what if an angel or a spirit?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no." And when the dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him by force from among them and bring him into the barracks. I'm sorry, but I just love it. Because Paul, again, master class, where he's like, this is going to set him off. And like, just remember, he knows he's protected by the Romans. He's got protection. And he's like, all right, let's light this one. Oh, he knew exactly what he was doing. So he says the one thing that sets them off, fighting. Now they're like, "Argh!" Each other. And the Pharisees are even like, this guy's fine. And so they just start going crazy, which not only gets them to just lose their minds and disarray, but now the Romans, like the tribune, is looking at all this and like, you guys are freaking nuts. Like, okay, clearly this is a you problem and not a this guy problem. You guys are all crazy. He's fine. So again, not a lot of good theology necessarily here, but this is really smart. I mean, well, if anything, know who you're talking to, know who you're dealing with, and if need be, know how to stick it to them a little bit. Maybe not the best example, but I mean, it worked for him. But it is really just fun to see how, I mean, Paul is really good. He's really good.
Probably used up all his chips.
Oh, he's getting some good use out of him for sure. You know what? That was funny. Touche. Very nice. Very nice. It showed me you're paying attention.
He says, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" And the tribune says, "I bought my citizenship."
Right. Oh, well, and everybody is like off kilter. Yeah, because the tribune is kind of like, but Paul's like, I was born into it. So, I mean, even if the tribune has an issue, he's like, well, I can't touch this guy. So, yeah, every level of this, Paul has like maneuvered himself like, you can't touch me.
Tribune probably wanted to back out of the room.
Oh, yeah, they wanted nothing to do with this, especially when the Pharisees and the Sadducees, like the church council, is fighting amongst themselves and like ready to kill each other over this.
Well, what did they do with Paul? Did he take off out of town?
Well, we've got a few more minutes. I can read on.
Sure.
Okay, so they bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified about me at Jerusalem, so you must bear witness also at Rome." So God comes to him and says, all right, Paul, you've done this in Jerusalem. You're going to do it in Rome now. When it was day, the Jews made a plot and bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. And they went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. You, therefore, along with the council, give notice now to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly. And we are ready to kill him before he comes near." Now the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush. So he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. And Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, "Paul, the prisoner, called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you." The tribune took him by the hand and going aside, asked him privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire somewhat more closely about him. But do not yield to them, for more than 40 of their men lie in ambush for him, having bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for the promise from you." So the tribune dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one you have informed me of this." Then he called two of the centurions and said, "At the third hour of the night, get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride, and bring him safely to Felix the governor. And he wrote a letter to this effect. Claudius Lysias, to his excellency the governor Felix. Greeting. This man was seized by Jews and was about to be killed by them when I came upon them with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen. Not completely false. And desiring to know the charge on which they accused him, I brought him down to their council. I found that he was accused about questions of their law, but charged with nothing deserving death or imprisonment. And when it was disclosed to me that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you at once, ordering his accusers to state before you what they have against him. So the soldiers, according to their instructions, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And the next day they returned to the barracks, leaving the horsemen to go on with him. When they came to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they presented Paul also before him. On reading the letter, he asked to what province he belonged. When he learned that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will hear you when your accusers arrive. And he commanded him to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. So, the Jews hatch a plan, or 40 of them are like, all right, we'll kill him. So they hatch the plan. They find out about it. They warn the tribune, and the tribune's like, okay, I'll send you to Caesarea. Now, based on his letter, you picked up on the whole, like, he didn't really tell him the whole truth. Like, he glossed over that whole, we had him in chains, we were about to flog him, that whole thing. So he's covering his butt a little bit and, leaving out the details that would get him in trouble. And he's sending a lot of soldiers. This is a pretty big contingent to take one guy to Caesarea. Very well protected, sending him to this other governor, Felix. And notice he says, like, okay, basically what he's doing is like, okay, you deal with this. He's passing the buck, essentially, because he's already kind of like got himself in potentially some hot water. And, anytime there's an uprising of Jews in Jerusalem, it never ends well for anybody. And any Roman governor who's overseeing it, they hate that. They hate being in Jerusalem. They hate having to deal with all these uprisings and these riots. Pilate hated it. Claudius hates it. So he's really kind of using this whole, like, we got to keep our citizens safe from these crazy, Jewish uprisings. Sending him to Caesarea to be like, yeah, so it's better for you to deal with it over there. Yeah. Or any kind of government, kind of like, this is not my division. That's not my jurisdiction. So yeah, that's basically what he's doing. So he sends him to Felix, and then we'll get into chapter 24 next time about how the continues with before Felix and all this other stuff.
Next Wednesday?
Yes. Yes.
Are you tired of reading?
No.
We could just sit back and we don't have to have paperwork. We'll just read us a story. Is that the end, Paul?
Not yet. That's the end of chapter 23.
Oh,
So 28.
More, I think.
Yeah. We're getting there. We'll be done by Advent.
he all spent his chips already.
Yeah. Any questions about anything tonight? See, it's fun. It's entertaining. Yeah, if Scripture can be really fun.
It is.
I mean,
It's a history.
yeah, just don't, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, yeah, that drags.
It's the best history book ever sold in the world.
Yeah.
That's right, you reminded me of a lot of today's politicians. They say one thing and then they want to back away from it.
No. I don't know where you're getting that from. Cool.
They haven't killed him yet.
No, he's still kicking. All right, well then we'll pick up on chapter 24 next week. All right, no problem. I might even be able to shut this off from here. Let's see. Oh, nope. Maybe.